adjusted.
I'm going live, doctor.
Okay. Live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another interesting episode of Tuesday Tea Talks. So Tea Talks is back and National Nutrition Month celebrations are going on, and a huge response from our nutrition fraternity for Tea Talks is coming, and we are very happy for all your participation and making this the hobbies thing a great, a huge, if I have to say, it's a success. Definitely everyone are participating with enthusiasm, and all your hobbies are being recorded. Might be we'll be using those in future for sessions and all. Thank you all for this participation, and moving on to today's session, over to Dr. Janaki ma'am to introduce Swathi Chitra.
Thank you, Mayuri. And really thanks all members of Tea Talks Tuesday group. We are really amazed with your hobbies and the work you do. Apart from being a nutritionist or a dietitian, that's very, very interesting. So I know, I mean, I can just put an icon of heart or a surprise, but I need more icons to really appreciate your participation in this National Nutrition Month. So today we are on the second topic for this month. And the speaker is very, very simple and grounded, Dr. Swathi Chitra. She is working in NIN, National Nutrition, National Institute of Nutrition here in Hyderabad. So her topic today is status of oxidative stress markers in age-related cataracts with or without diabetes. This is her study, so she's going to present the study today for us. So take your pen and paper and be ready with all the questions. As long as she's here, she is the right person to know more about this kind of health situation, especially when it comes to your clients as well, with or without diabetes. So over to Swathi Chitra, presenting you Dr. Swathi Chitra.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mayuri, for such a warm welcome. Ma'am, I'll stop my video and then start sharing the screen.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, one and all. Once again, I thank Dr. Janaki ma'am and Mayuri for giving such a warm welcome and actually giving me an opportunity to present my work here on Tea Talks. So without wasting much time, I would like to start the work, start the discussion. I would rather not say it as a presentation. Let us keep it as discussion and try to understand the research that is being published. We are basically transforming that is being published to the ground level where a layman also can understand what is happening, to the published data. So this is a small piece of study that I'm going to present today, which is already published a year back in experimental eye research, which talks about the status of oxidative stress markers in age-related cataracts with and without diabetes. Now, all of us are very much familiar with the term called diabetes. We are familiar with oxidative stress. Now, what are these markers? Now, markers can be defined as anything which will tell the status of the health. For example, we can take HbA1c. It's a marker to diagnose the glucose metabolism in the body, the percentage glucose metabolism that is getting metabolized in the body. Another example is serum creatinine, which we use it as a marker to know the status of kidney functioning. So these are just an example, simple examples which we come across in day-to-day life. And next, coming to age-related cataracts that I'll be discussing in my presentation. So basically, we are trying to assess the oxidative stress in age-related cataracts in combination with and without diabetes. So now what is cataract? So we have a part in our eye which is called as lens and which is completely transparent. As long as it is completely transparent, there is no obstruction in the vision. But then over we age, the lens in our becomes opaque and it obstructs the vision of a normal individual. So cataract is nothing but opaqueness of a lens to an extent that it is obstructing the clear vision of an individual. So that is termed as cataract. Now, cataract is not an overnight process. The development or progression of cataract is not an overnight process. It doesn't happen like, overnight. It's a very gradual process. So the lens is completely clear, and then over the time of aging, during the age, there are certain early changes in the lens, and over decades, the cataract, the lens becomes opaque and further becomes completely opaque, where we call it as a mature cataract, which can be surgically removed, or we have to take certain precautions to prevent the progression of cataract. So it's a normal process that happens to everyone during the age. And so often they are called as age-related cataracts. Now let us look at a picture which demonstrates us about age-related changes in the human lens. So firstly, you can see a clear lens which is completely transparent that we all have. And next over, when we're in the process of aging, per se, we are at the age of 54 and healthy, apparently healthy, according to the definition of WHO, the lens starts becoming partially opaque and which looks yellow colored. And then over some years, over some decades, should happen for a lens to turn into completely opaque. Now, this complete opaque lens is called a cataract, and this should be surgically removed, or we have to take certain precautions to prevent the progression of cataract. Now let's understand what are age-related cataracts. Now, any lens opacity that is developing after the 4th decade of life, that is, once we cross 40 years, then if there are any changes in the lens, which is towards the progression of cataract, we term it as age-related cataract. So any cataract that develops, after 40 years of life, and it should be only associated with age, then only we call it as age-related cataract. It should not be associated with some other etiological factors. So only when cataract is developed during the normal process of aging in an healthy individual, we call it as age-related cataract. Now, even in age-related cataracts, we have various types. Now, it depends upon the place in the lens that it is occurring. So we have nuclear sclerotic cataract. So the center part of the lens is called nucleus. And now when this nucleus starts becoming opaque, we term it as nuclear sclerotic cataract. And the next is we have cortical cataract. Now I told you that in the lens, the center part is the nucleus, and surrounding the nucleus, we have cortical cells. So when there is opaqueness in the cortical cells of the lens, we call it as cortical cataract. And we have a third type, which is called as posterior subcapsular cataract. Now, for any object per se, we have an anterior side and a posterior side. Likewise, for lens also, when a cataract develops towards the posterior side, and that too beneath a capsule, then we term it as posterior subscapular cataract. So something which is occurring, when a nucleus becomes opaque, it is nuclear cataract. When the cortical cells of the lens become opaque, we call it as cortical cataract. And when the lens opacity is seen in the posterior subscapular region of the lens, we call it as posterior subscapular cataract. Now it's very easy to identify nuclear cataract, cortical cataract, and the PSC, which is posterior subscapular cataract. And cortical cataract, you can imagine, for a bullet pot, you have wheels, right? So it just appears as a strokes of the wheel. Like, as we see strokes in the wheel, it exactly appears like that when you try to look at it at the clinical level. Now, it is not necessary that a person develops only one kind of cataract. So it can be a combination of cataracts a person can develop in one single lens. So that time we term it as a mixed type cataract. So we have nuclear cataract, cortical cataract, posterior subscapular cataract, and a mixed type cataract. Now, why is cataract so important, and why there is a need to do some research on progression and development of cataract, or to know the reasons so that we can prevent the progression of cataract. So if you see globally, when we look at WHO statistics, this figure is unimaginable, that 33% of visual impairment is the cause for 33% of visual impairment is cataract. And if we leave these cataracts unoperated, and which leads to avoidable blindness, which is accounting for 51%. Now this is globally. When it comes to India, 62.6% of cataracts leads to preventable blindness. And then the most important fact is, if you look at the onset of cataracts, that is the age at which Indians develop cataract, is 14 years earlier when compared to any developed country like United States of America. So if you think that in USA, an individual is developing cataract at the age of 54, we as Indians, if we are not maintaining our health, then we develop cataracts very early at 40 years. That is, there is almost like 14 years of gap. Like, Indians develop cataracts 14 years earlier when compared to individuals in the developed country. And even if you look at the prevalence, that is the occurrence of cataract. Suppose in USA, 1 in 10 people gets cataract, develops cataract. In India, the prevalence, the occurrence of cataract in Indian individuals is 3 times more. That is, 3 in 10 people will get cataract. And 60% diabetic population, the diabetic population is 60% at greater risk in developing cataracts. And even the incidence of cataracts in diabetic people is 2 to 5 times more. But then it also depends upon various other factors. Now the 60% risk also depends upon the age of a person, gender of a person, whether the person is male or female, or based on the glucose management, how well they manage their glucose levels, and also the duration of diabetes will matter. Now, as of now, the only treatment that is available globally is surgical extraction of the cataract. Now, even the surgical extraction of cataract, it has its own pros and cons. So we always said, and we still believe and follow, that prevention is always better than cure. Now, coming to the risk factors for the development of age-related cataracts, we have lots of minor risk factors also, other than the major risk factors that I have put here as a schematic picture. Minor risk factors can be genetics, smoking, alcohol consumption, and all this. But then this paper deals, suppose, about the biochemical mechanisms and, with that aspect. So I've put this schematic diagram to explain the biochemical mechanisms that are involved in progression of age-related cataract. So the first and foremost being nutrition. So when an individual takes a diet which is deficient in the antioxidants, what happens? That goes and creates a drastic imbalance in antioxidants and reactive oxygen species. Now, this imbalance of low antioxidants and high production of reactive oxygen species will create oxidative stress in the body. Now, this is not only created by the deficiency of antioxidants in the diet, but also during the normal aging process. Even a person is claimed to be healthy, in normal aging, there is as such less or a reduced immunity, which will lead to increased inflammation. Now, this also will lead to oxidative stress. Now, there is more of oxidative stress in the body. It leads to 2 things. One is increased cellular senescence, that is damage to the cells. The cells automatically go into apoptotic phase and end their life. And the other thing is it will damage certain macromolecules. For example, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, all these are macromolecules. So the damage happens to these macromolecules, which further will help in progression of cataracts. Now, on other side, in aging, there is as such less physical activity. So when there is less physical activity, there is a scope for an individual to be overweight or obesity. And when a person is either overweight or obese, what happens is there is impaired glucose tolerance, which will activate a pathway called as polyol pathway in our body. Now, this pathway is also activated when there are sustained uncontrolled glucose levels that are maintained in a body. That is nothing called as hyperglycemia. Now, hyperglycemia also should be like, it is a constant hyperglycemia. It should be constant, and it is uncontrolled. We come across people repeatedly, they keep coming to us having 375, 400, even above that, either the fasting or the postprandial values. In such kind of people, the body chooses an alternative mechanism to divert this glucose, where a pathway called polyol pathway is activated. Now, when this polyol pathway is activated, glucose is converted into sorbitol. Now, this converted sorbitol, it cannot cross the cell membranes. So it gets accumulated over there in the cells and creates an osmotic imbalance. And because of this, there is a structural damage to the lens epithelial cells as well as to the cortical cells. And that is how the age-related cataracts progress. And on other side, when there is hyperglycemia, that is sustained uncontrolled hyperglycemia, this also will generate, this also will lead to non-enzymatic glycation. That is, the free glucose that is available excess in our body will go and react with the protein moieties or the lipid moieties, and to certain stage this reaction is reversible, but once the advanced glycation end products are formed, these are not reversible. So these accumulated advanced glycation end products, they will further do a structural damage to the proteins, and which will further lead to age-related cataracts. So this is an overall picture schematic diagram which represents the major molecular mechanisms that are involved in the development of age-related cataracts. Now, so it is not that in India or in abroad, people have not focused on studying these biochemical mechanisms. But then until 2000, 20s to 2000, researchers only concentrated studying these biochemical mechanisms only in experimental animal models. And recently, in past 2 decades, we are studying these biochemical mechanisms in age-related cataracts. But then, however, we are not able to choose a proper controls. Like, cataract, age-related cataract, if we consider it as an experimental group, we should have a proper control group, right? So that was lacking. And whatever studies with respect to humans that is done on these biochemical mechanisms is done in the Western population, but that does not represent Indian population. And secondly, in India, the studies representing these biochemical pathways, either in the lens or the blood components, they are very limited. And even if they have done, see, among all the biochemical parameters that I have shown, which are interlinked, but then researchers have picked up either one or the other molecular mechanism that has to be studied, and they have picked up one or the other type of cataract. So the research, whatever we have, is limited, and whatever research that is available so far is in bits and pieces. So what are we lacking here? So today, a comprehensive study converging the major mechanisms, as I told you, as I put in the schematic diagram, and their association with subtypes of age-related cataracts in presence or absence of diabetes without any other complications. Now, this is also very important. It is not just enough that you recruit a diabetic subject. It is also important to look into the complications that they have, because they are also going to influence the molecular mechanisms in the body. So, and having non-diabetic clear lens subjects as control groups is so far, even till date, is not available in India. So now we know a research problem that has to be addressed, and why we have to address this research problem. Now we have to know the study design. So for that, we have to approach a statistician. Even I did so. So basically now I know that I have to study these parameters in age-related cataract subjects. So these are my experimental group. So we consider them as cases. Now I need normal subjects without cataract and having clear lens. So these population will become control groups. So my study is a case control study for which I have to calculate the sample size. And according to the procedure that we have adopted to do the sample size calculation, it says that in my study, I can have any number of groups, any number of combinations, but the only thing that I have to see is at least 135 subjects should be there in each group. So now moving on, this is the crux of the study, the enrollment and recruitment part of the study population. Now, we know that age-related cataracts, by definition, they say that, a cataract which is happening over 4th decade of your life. So we have to choose population above 40 years and below 80 years. So our target population was 40 to 80 years. And initially we had a collaboration with the hospital, and we tried to recruit eye hospital. We tried to recruit subjects from the eye hospital. And in almost a year and a half passed, and we could recruit only 301 subjects. And then we thought this is not going to help our study. And then we started conducting various eye screening camps in different localities and communities in and around Hyderabad. And another about 2 years, we could recruit about 732 subjects, enrolled basically for the study. So totally by the end of 4 years, we had enrolled 1033 subjects. And in this 1033 subjects, we have excluded all the subjects who had early changes in the lens or who had cataracts which cannot be graded. So they are in between stage. Either they have a clear lens, but the early stages have already started in the lens, but the cataracts that they have cannot also be graded. So all such populations were removed from the study, and also any subject who had any eye-related problems were also excluded from the study. And finally, we landed at having subjects either with a clear lens or cataract as 950. And further, from this 950 subjects, we have also excluded subjects who had either some communicable diseases or non-communicable diseases, except for type 2 diabetes without complications. So all other diseases, like, if the subject had any of these diseases, we have excluded all of them. And then further, we landed up having 835 subjects to be screened further. And we also excluded subjects taking any kind of medication or supplementation. And we also excluded subjects who are consuming any special diets like a keto diet or Kadavali's diet or a millet diet. So we recruited only subjects who are following normal lifestyle, normal healthy lifestyle, in a way to be more clear. And then finally, we consulted 594 participants for their voluntary approval for the study, and out of which 57 of them refused to participate in the study. And we had 537 subjects in hand on whom we can do a biochemical test. And then we have done biochemical tests on them, and 38 subjects we had to exclude from the study since they had high serum creatinine levels. And then we landed up having 499 eligible subjects for the study, in whom we had certain missing data, extreme outliers for around 27 subjects. We even excluded those subjects from our study. So we finally landed up having 472 subjects. Now these 472 subjects have to be divided, right, into control and experimental groups. So based on the lens status, we had 4 groups in our study. That is non-diabetic subjects with clear lens. Okay, so we have 2 groups with clear lens. One is non-diabetic clear lens and the second is diabetic clear lens. Now these both groups, they serve as controls for diabetic cataract and the non-diabetic cataract. See, now this is subjects with clear lens without diabetes. The second group is subjects with clear lens but with diabetes. The third group is subjects having age-related cataracts but they don't have diabetes. And the fourth group is having age-related cataracts and also the presence of diabetes, but none of them had any other complications. Otherwise, other than cataract and diabetes, they can be called as apparently healthy. Now, as I mentioned in my introduction, we have types of cataracts. So in almost 1033 participants that we have enrolled, we could hardly come across subjects having cortical cataracts or subscapular cataracts, like, a countable number, which we could not include in our study. So we restricted our study by only limiting to nuclear cataracts and the mixed cataracts. So this is about all the enrollment process, screening and recruitment of the subjects for the study. Now, as I mentioned that we have done biochemical tests. So the first thing is the sample collection. So we have asked all our subjects as fasting. Like, it is mandatory that they have to fast for 12 hours before they give the blood sample. And a venous blood sample was taken from them, which is collected both in heparin and EDTA tubes. And soon after collecting, we are transported very safely in an ice bag to the laboratory. And the blood samples were centrifuged to separate the components of the blood. So we landed up taking plasma and RBC for our analysis in the study. And once this processing is over, all the samples, like, for the further analysis, we have stored them in -80 degrees centigrade. Now, the most important things that anyone in any study should focus on is the fasting aspect, the venal, excuse me. Sorry for that. So first thing is 12 hours fasting is mandatory. Second is collection of breeder's blood sample. And some of the parameters that we had to analyze were light sensitive. So all 4 years during the blood sample collection, each sample was collected in a subdued conditions, that is in absence of light. And in the same status, it was brought to the lab, and in absence of light, the samples were processed and also analyzed. So that is the third most important thing that we had maintained. And the fourth thing is, if you want accurate results in such experiments, what you have to do is you have to process and store the sample within 4 hours of your first sample that has been collected. So if you try to collect your fasting blood sample at around 8, by 12, all this procedure should happen. Aliquots have to be made according to the analysis plan, and before 12, all the samples should be stored in -80 other than what you're performing for that day. So on the same day, so this took half day for us for every time we went for blood collection. And the second half day, we kept it for doing all the clinical parameters assessment, which I'll be discussing in my later slides. So we have also, coming to the methods, we have also recorded few of the anthropometric measurements, which we felt are certainly required for this study. Those are height, weight of the subject, waist circumference, hip circumference, mid upper arm circumference, and the skin fold thickness. And we have also recorded certain information on social demographic characteristics, which included education, living, status of living, current smoking, current alcohol consumption status, and also whether the person is vegetarian food or is a non-vegetarian basically. And among the clinical parameters, we have estimated fasting blood glucose then and there, and then we have analyzed glycosylated hemoglobin, that is HbA1c. We have also recorded systolic and diastolic blood pressure of the subjects. We have done complete lipid profile for the subjects, and we have also done serum creatinine for all the subjects who have been recruited to the study. And now we have dealt with we have dealt with the anthropometric parameters, socio-demographic, and the clinical aspects of the study. Now, to assess oxidative stress, oxidative stress in the body, it goes and damages the macromolecules in our body. For example, it can be protein, it can be a lipid, or it can be a DNA molecule that it can cause damage to. So we picked up these 3 molecules to express the amount of oxidative stress that is the person having. So initially, we have measured protein oxidation of the proteins. So when proteins are getting oxidized in the body, that there is any damage to the proteins in the body, a byproduct called carbonyls is released during that process. So we try to estimate these carbonyl molecules to indirectly measure the amount of protein oxidation that is happening in one's body. So this we did it spectrophotometrically, and the procedure that we followed is Uchida et al., which is published in 1998, and we have used spectrophotometer, and the wavelength was set to 365 nanometers to estimate the protein carbonyls in the plasma sample. And next, we have also assessed peroxidation of lipids. Now, like proteins, when there is peroxidation of lipids in the body, the byproduct called melandialdehyde is released. Now, this we have analyzed using a procedure, Yagi et al., which is published in 1976. This also has been assessed spectrophotometrically, setting the wavelength at 533 nanometers. Now, likewise, we also have assessed oxidative damage of the DNA. Now, when there is oxidative damage to the DNA, again a byproduct called 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine is released. So this we have, for estimating the concentration of this compound 8-OHTG, we have used an ELISA kit, and we have used a multimode reader to know the concentration, which was set to a wavelength of 450 nanometers. Now, I have also mentioned a biochemical mechanism in the schematic picture, if you remember. When there is sustained uncontrolled hyperglycemia, there is production of advanced glycation end products. So these advanced glycation end products were also analyzed in the plasma sample by a method which was developed by Sampath Kumar et al. In 2005, where we need a spectrophlorimeter to do this analysis. And then the another interesting pathway, till today, it is said and claimed that only during hyperglycemia, that when we have excess glucose in our body, that a normal metabolism can handle it, it is fine. But when there is excess glucose, that a metabolism, that exokinases are all saturated and the glucose has to be diverted somewhere, then this excess glucose is diverted to a pathway called polyol pathway. Now, this is a very simple pathway which has only 2 steps. So first, glucose is being oxidized to sorbitol and an enzyme is required, aldose reductase. So we have tried and estimated the activity of this enzyme, which is called aldose reductase. Now, glucose is getting oxidized to sorbitol, and sorbitol, as I mentioned, that it cannot cross the cell membrane. So it is getting accumulated within the cell. Thereby, there is oxidative stress damage that is happening to the cell, which will lead to progression of age-related cataracts. Now, this sorbitol further gets converted to fructose with the help of an enzyme called sorbitol dehydrogenase. Now, these are rate limiting steps. It is not like, the amount of glucose, suppose 2 molecules of glucose are getting converted to sorbitol. It is not that whatever sorbitol is generated, it is not the same amount of sorbitol that is going to get converted to fructose. Now it is rate limiting. Now, it can convert only 1 or half a molecule of sorbitol to fructose. So there's too much of sorbitol which is getting accumulated there in the cell. Since it cannot cross the cell membrane, there is osmotic imbalance that is developed, which will lead to oxidative stress, which will damage the cell membranes, and that is how a person develops age-related cataract with respect to activation of the polyol pathway. So here, to study this pathway, to understand this pathway, we have studied 2 molecules. We have tried to estimate aldose reductase activity as well as the sorbitol levels in all the subjects. Now we have discussed about all the methodology that is being used. So now how do, we have got the results. Now we have to interpret the results. This also was a very difficult task for us. I'll try and explain you why it was such a difficult process for us to analyze the results. First thing is, initially we have done a pilot study recruiting about 30 to 100 subjects, and what we have found is, now as I told, a cataract is a very gradual process, right? It's like the development of cataract that does not occur overnight. So there are various stages in between which would take decades to happen. So we wanted control subjects having only clear lens. We didn't even wanted our control subjects to have any changes in the lens. Now we have excluded all the subjects who had early changes in the lens and also which are non-gradable cataracts. We have only taken subjects who had gradable cataracts. So that is the reason we have encountered such a big age difference, which was statistically significant between the control groups and the cataract groups with and without diabetes. So we approached a statistician and we performed an age adjustment analysis, which is done with a statistician, where we try to adjust the age for all the parameters. So that we do this because age, this huge statistical difference between the age, difference in age between the controls and the cataract population should not affect the results of the other parameters. And we have done, and stunningly, we have seen that, there was no difference between the adjusted data and an unadjusted data. Now, this all happened because the way we have, developed our study from the time of naming a study, designing a study as case control. Then we followed very strict exclusion criteria when we were recruiting the subjects, and also when we were doing analysis, collection of blood sample, processing it, storing it, and later analyzing and doing the experimentation part. So our data with age adjustment and without age adjustment, it remained the same. And we have got a huge big applause for this finding from the reviewers where we have published this study. And so this was about the difference in age and how we had to overcome. And then all our study groups, all the subjects, the median values of all the subjects with respect to BMI, they were leaning towards overweight. So we have seen that, the median values for all the subjects, either irrespective of the groups, whether they belong to clear lens or the cataract group, we have found that all the subjects were falling into a category of overweight. And I don't know if many of you are aware of this. Now, recently, any epidemiological studies, when they are planned, like previously, we are not trying to record waist circumference, hip circumference, and waist to hip ratio. This is because when you try to record and arrive at waist hip ratio, it is already set and it is documented in the literature that, both waist circumference and waist to hip ratio data will be the same. So since we had the data, we wanted to see even whether we can validate that data which has been already published. So this was our second big observation with respect to anthropometric parameters. So now we can confidently say that if you are taking a correct measurement of waist circumference of a subject, steady subject, you need not go for a hip circumference or waist to hip ratio. Only that will define the kind of obesity the person will have. Now coming to the other parameters like the current smoking, alcohol, vegetarian or non-being vegetarian, the other social parameters. Very interestingly, since our population was limited, we could not find much variation or significant results when we tried to see an association between smoking status and occurrence of cataract, or consumption of alcohol with the occurrence of cataract, or a person being vegetarian or a non-vegetarian did not matter at all. But we have still found something very interesting where we have got significant results in terms of association between lower education and higher occurrence of cataract. That is, the lower the person is educated, the prevalence of that person being, the prevalence of occurrence of cataract in that person is significantly high. Likewise, we have also found another observation when seen an association between the status of living and the occurrence of cataract. What we have seen is persons who are, the subjects who lived in nuclear families developed cataracts very early in their life when compared to subjects who lived in joint families. And now coming to the age at onset of cataract, and we have seen at what median age actually is the cataract happening in an individual, and we did not find any statistical difference in either types of cataract or compared the data as a whole. And similar research was also published some time back by the same group in our lab. And so we are once again validating that there is no difference in age with respect to terms of onset of cataract, whether it could be the total cataract or the types of cataract. But something interesting what we have come across here is the prevalence of cataracts between the genders. So we have seen a significant difference in prevalence of cataract with respect to women compared to men. That is, the occurrence of cataract, the development of cataract is found to be more in women when compared to men. And then coming to the findings of the clinical parameters, and then there's lots of research done, and there's lots of controversial research that is also available with respect to analyzing the fasting blood glucose or the fasting plasma glucose sample. Now, there are few studies which that only fasting blood glucose has to be estimated for certain reasons, and they give their own reasons to estimate fasting plasma glucose, and they have their own reasons for justification. But if you do a very controlled study, taking care of all the parameters, what we have found is either you analyze the fasting blood glucose, in the whole blood or in the plasma, you certainly land up getting similar results. Per se, now we have seen a significant difference in either plasma blood glucose or the fasting blood glucose, whole blood, to be significantly high in diabetic population when compared to non-diabetic population. And similarly with HbA1c also, we have found very interesting results that, the subjects whom we recruited were had a very strict glycemic control, and still the HbA1c percentage was significantly high when compared between diabetic and non-diabetic population. So this was something to do about the clinical parameters, the findings, the main findings that I have highlighted. And now coming to the oxidative stress markers, as I told you, that we have analyzed estimated protein carbonides, which is an indirect way to measure protein oxidation in the body. And we have seen that there is no difference in oxidation of proteins in all the 4 groups. So the oxidation of protein is happening at the same level in all the 4 groups, no matter the person has a clear lens no matter the person has a cataract, no matter the person has diabetes or non-diabetes. And we have come across certain literature which claimed that, protein oxidation is significantly high in aging. That is, as a person ages, when you compare to younger age groups, the protein oxidation, they claim, is that happens in a bigger way in old age. So we anyway had different age groups. So we segregated our data based on the age groups. So we segregated the cataract subjects, non-diabetic as well as diabetic subjects, into 40 to 60 age group and 61 to 80 age group. And in both with and without diabetes, the cataract subjects had similar oxidation of protein comparable to the control groups, that is the clear lens groups. And there is also a published data that is available which talk upon types of cataract and oxidation of proteins. They say, like, there is data available which speaks on protein oxidation happening more in nuclear cataracts compared to mixed cataracts or PSC or CC. But according to our study, the protein oxidation is same in all the types of cataracts. So significantly, we did not find any such results which are thought-provoking and which can be further carried for the investigation. So coming to melanaldehyde levels, which is a marker for lipid peroxidation, we have found very interesting results in terms of lipid peroxidation when we have compared this estimated and compared this melanaldehyde levels between the 4 groups, that is clear lens without diabetes, clear lens with diabetes, cataract subjects without diabetes, and cataract subjects with diabetes. Now we have found a significant difference in lipid peroxidation with respect to non-diabetic cataract subjects and with respect to diabetic cataract subjects. Now, what does this mean? This means that irrespective of the presence or absence of diabetes, there is lipid peroxidation happening in the progression of cataract. When there is progression of a cataract, when the person is developing cataract, there is huge amount of lipid peroxidation happening, which further increases in presence of diabetes. And further, we have also checked the status of lipid peroxidation in different age groups, but we have not seen any difference. As long as person is healthy, when they have cataract with diabetes, it is the same amount of lipid peroxidation that is happening, which is very much significant when compared to the control groups. And between the types of cataracts, we have seen that lipid peroxidation is extensively happening in non-diabetic mixed cataract population, as well as in diabetic mixed cataract population when compared to nuclear sclerosis. I mean, lipid peroxidation is at higher end when a person has mixed cataract compared to nuclear sclerosis. And we have also analyzed a marker which is 8-OHDG, 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine, which is a marker for oxidative damage of DNA. And like what we have seen in protein carbonyls, we did not find any significant difference of this oxidative damage happening to DNA between the groups with respect to cataract or presence or absence of cataract or presence or absence of diabetes. We did not find any significant results. So even we compared the same data in different age groups, still we did not see any significant difference in oxidation. And when compared even in the types of cataract, we did not see a significant results. And coming to glycation, as I told, we have also analyzed advanced glycation end products in the plasma sample. And again, we have found very thought-provoking results with respect to advanced glycation end products. We have seen a very clear and a significant difference in accumulation of advanced glycation end products only in diabetic cataracts, the 4th group. So there is no significant, when this diabetic cataract group is compared with all the 3 other groups, clear lens, diabetic clear lens, and non-diabetic cataracts, we found a significant increase in accumulation of advanced glycation end products only in presence of diabetes. And then we try to again validate our results by splitting our data into different age groups, which again show the same thing. And when coming to the types of cataract, when I discussed about lipid peroxidation, I have mentioned that lipid peroxidation, the occurrence of lipid peroxidation was more in mixed type of cataracts. But when it came to advanced glycation end products, the accumulation of AGS is more in diabetic nucleosclerosis. rather than the mixed type. And further to validate this data, now I have told only presence of diabetes is making a difference in accumulation of advanced glycation end products in our plasma. We have validated our data performing a correlation analysis. Now if you see, excuse me. You see on x-axis of both the graphs, you see age in years of non-diabetic cataract subjects and age in years of diabetic cataract subjects. And when you try and see the median age of non-diabetic cataract subjects, it is 64 years, and it is 64 years for diabetic cataract subjects also. So now the age is common and having cataract is common, right? So the only difference in these two populations is presence or absence of diabetes. So for this, and to further validate our results, to say that only presence of diabetes is making, is contributing to the accumulation of advanced glycation end products, we have done this correlation and we have found a positive correlation between the AGE index and the presence of diabetes. Whereas we have found negative correlation between AGE index and non-diabetic cataracts. Now, coming to polyol pathway, here I can say till now I am mentioning that we have got some interesting results, strong evidences, but now with respect to polyol pathway, we have found novel results, very novel. Till now, no one has published it and either told that something like this can happen in a body. So as I told you, the polyol pathway, it has two steps. So in the two steps, in the first step, we have analyzed aldose reductase activity, and so the second step, we have looked at sorbitol levels. When both aldose reductase, now this is done in RBC, erythrocytes. Now when we have compared the data of aldose reductase activity and sorbitol levels, what we have found is, this graph is for aldose reductase activity and this graph is for sorbitol levels. We have seen that, non-diabetic cataract subjects and cataract subjects, the AR activity was significantly same when compared to non-diabetic population having clear lens or the diabetic population having clear lens. That is, like in AG, accumulation of advanced glycation end products, I have told that accumulation of advanced glycation end products is more in presence of diabetes. But here what I am trying to deliver is the polyol pathway, which in literature says that it should get activated only in hyperglycemia. That is, when the body has excess glucose that it cannot metabolize normally using hexokinases. All the hexokinases are saturated. The excess glucose is diverted to polyol pathway. Now, this should happen according to literature only in presence of hyperglycemia. But now we have two study groups, right? 4 study groups. So the third and fourth are the cataract population without diabetes and with diabetes. Now, when aldose reductase activity is compared, we have seen that, in presence or absence of diabetes, the polyol pathway is getting equally activated. So, which is very novel finding that we have observed. And we have also split our data based on the age groups, and we have still found the same thing that has been happening. That is, the polyol pathway is getting activated in both diabetes and non-diabetic cataract subjects, that too equally. And coming to the activity of aldose reductase and sorbitol levels, when we have compared between the types of cataract, again we have seen that in both non-diabetic cataracts as well as in diabetic cataracts, in both the AR activity and the sorbitol levels, they were significantly high in all the types, irrespective of presence or absence of cataract. Both the AR activity and the sorbitol levels were significantly high in all the types of cataracts, irrespective of the presence or absence of diabetes when compared to the controls. And now again, to further validate our data, we have done correlation analysis, and we have found that there is a negative correlation that existed between the age and the presence of cataract and also the diabetes. So what we can infer from here is that the polyol pathway, which is supposed to get activated only in presence of diabetes, is equally getting activated in non-diabetic cataract subjects. Now, looking at the summary, what we have come across, the major findings that we have come across during our study, doing this piece of work is put here. The first thing is the nuclear cataracts were more predominant when compared to all other types of cataracts, and nuclear cataracts were predominant both in case of diabetes and in case of non-diabetic subjects. And when compared between the genders, the presence of cataract was significantly high among women when compared to men. And as I have already mentioned, that lower education and nuclear family lifestyle was significantly associated with the presence of cataract. And as I mentioned, that lipid peroxidation in age-related cataracts is independent of diabetes. So this means that whether a person with cataract, whether they have diabetes or they do not have diabetes, there is a significant amount of lipid peroxidation of lipids that is happening in his body or in her body when compared to a normal subject with a clear lens. And the other thing is only the presence of diabetes augmented plasma advanced glycation index. That means only the presence of diabetes is accumulating advanced glycation end products in the plasma. And the third one, which I've told and I've been stressing on, is that disease-free aging, that is apparently healthy population who just have cataract, but no other diseases or disorders or secondary complications in them. And in controlled diabetes, the polyol pathway is getting activated equally. So we still are planning to know the exact biochemical mechanism to figure out why is that this pathway, which is said to be activated only in hyperglycemia, is also getting activated in normal disease-free aging. So far, with respect to this data, this was published, as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, and got published in Experimental. Any questions?
Oh, thank you, Swathi. You can stop the screen share
Sure.
and I can put on your video. That was a very extensive, excellent and perfect study and very interesting findings actually. So anybody has any questions you can ask. Meanwhile, I'll ask a couple of questions. This is very interesting that polyol pathway is getting activated irrespective of diabetes. Now the second stage of the study would be why it is getting activated. Is it because age relation? Any assumptions or hypothesis regarding?
No, that is what we are trying to develop an hypothesis and then trying to frame up a project which we are going to work in near future. So it's already in process.
Any studies?
So we are looking only at the biochemical mechanisms to see and study the biochemical mechanisms which are letting this happen. You know, usually in diabetes, there is hyperglycemia. Now, if you compare the age of the two different groups, third group and fourth group, cataract with diabetes and cataract without diabetes, the median age is 64 for both the groups. Right. Only difference in them is presence or absence of diabetes, but the cataract is common.
Right.
So even we are like clueless, ma'am, we are trying to develop an hypothesis and then work on it further.
Okay. Any questions? And you also found that decreased or lower education levels is one of the contributing factor for cataract. So what are the factors that can, I mean, this is one factor, maybe
yes, just one factor.
Not educated is one, but what can contribute to cataract?
Ma'am, as simple, ma'am, from ages, even if you look at the data which has been published from 60s, there is no variation in this particular data. They have been always saying and publishing saying that, you know, lower education, the person with a lower education probably is not unaware of practicing a healthy lifestyle. But even now, these days, even urban population, like, you know, we cannot claim that we are even being educated or following a healthy lifestyle. So with even taking out all those exclusion criteria and the factors, however, less education, awareness of a person. When the person is less aware of nutrition or what has to be eaten, taken on day-to-day basis, the occurrence of cataract is much earlier, and even the prevalence is higher in that population. Somehow in day-to-day, if we are not eating today, we try to cope up tomorrow, ma'am, but they don't have that awareness of compensating their meal plan.
Correct.
Yeah, that awareness they don't have. Probably that could be one of the major reasons.
What do you recommend to prevent cataract? At what age should we start the preventive actions, either through nutrition or other aspects?
It's from the time the mother conceives, ma'am. Even before that, even a mother is planning to conceive. I feel like a woman should be very careful in what she eats, how much she eats, the amount of physical activity she does, and the kind of lifestyle she practices. It's just not after the kid is born or it is at certain stage in the life. Of course, there is catch-up growth. Of course. But then other epigenetic factors, I don't think so we can control after the child is born.
Right. Any specific foods you recommend?
Balanced diet, ma'am.
Yeah,
see, what I would suggest is, rather than saying balanced diet, try not eat anything that is processed and which is prepared outside your kitchen. Right. This simple trick will definitely work, which we have been following and which has been worked for all of us.
Any questions?
No, doctor. Waiting from audience. And how is nuclear family is, nuclear family is also one of the factors, right?
Yes, yes. Exactly.
So how does it contribute for the?
So I'll take my own example. Now I live in a nuclear family where me, my kid, and husband lives. I don't have a support from either my mother-in-laws because they have their own, things to look at, right. Other family members to look at. So now, if I have parents at my home, they plan diet very well. They cook. They try to compensate. If one meal is missed, they try to compensate. That is what all our mothers did. But truly speaking, I don't think so. I follow it. So I'm the best example.
Because
in spite of being in this profession.
Yeah, yes, true, ma'am. Because with the if you are educated, then you feel like you have to work, do justification for the study that you have done, the education that you have done, and then you land up getting a job, and there's too much of work stress. Probably how much ever we try to plan, we end up being stressed, not able to plan our day properly. How much ever we try to plan. Now this trying to plan also is an additional stress, I feel, is like,
because this current
oxidative stress in the body. Yeah. So but if I see my brother, he's very relaxed. Even my sister-in-law, she goes for work. Both of them go for work. But my parents are there to take care of children, to drop them in school, bring back them from school, give them some proper supplement after, snack kind of thing to the children. Morning, my mother prepares wholesome breakfast. Lunch is very much planned. Dinner is planned. So all that I don't think so, I'm doing. Correct. So rather than, taking some other people as example, I would say like, me being a nutritionist is like, just not happening, but additionally is causing more stress because I'm not able to plan it properly.
Very true, because this current generation is more of nuclear families, and people are not realizing the importance of the joint families. Yes. I think this could be a message. Very good presentation with good examples by Sasikala. Sasikala is saying this.
And what are the common tests for oxidative stress? Any common tests?
Whatever I've done, whatever I've put here are the basic tests, ma'am. Even like, if you have even looked at the protocols that I have put in the methodology, they're published way back in 29 and 20s. So we still are following the same protocols and trying to estimate the same parameters to assess the oxidative stress. Those are the basic parameters. So nothing beyond it is required.
Okay. But are they available in general diagnostics? I don't.
No, ma'am, that is not required at the clinical level.
Okay.
Clinical setup, they only try to use a slit lamp. They try to grade the cataract and tell you what kind of cataract. They put everything on paper. Only thing is we don't look at it. Okay. We just think cataract is cataract.
Yeah,
We don't
Right.
see like, whether it is a developed cataract, is it a immature cataract, whether it is, gradable cataract. Now, even in certain commercial hospitals, even before the cataract matures, they are trying to remove it, which actually shouldn't be done.
Okay.
So this is one of the points when I speak about the surgical extractions.
Okay.
So cataract has to reach a certain stage. It should become mature to a
Mature.
certain stage, which it can be removed.
True.
So more than the technology, I feel it is the application and practice that we do at our level as a nutritionist or at the clinical level as doctors.
Okay.
The waist measurement is one individual anthropometric
Yes, ma'am.
measurement that can be considered as, we can grade obesity accordingly.
Yes, ma'am. Just to know whether the person
any
is...
numbers, any cutoff numbers we can mention now?
Yeah, ma'am. We have published for Indians, patient, like we have a book which is recently released by, in 2010 it got released, where we have set our own standards for waist hip ratio also. But waist ratio is technically 0.8 for women and 0.85 or even higher end is 0.9 for men.
And also there is the result finding says that women are more prone to the cataracts than the men. And is it because of the poor nutrition that is attributing, or not taking care of? Yeah.
Here it is much to do about the estrogen, the balance in the hormones. So as a woman ages, like, if there is no healthy lifestyle that is being practiced, or they are physically not active, it also controls the mechanisms of hormones that are released in our body. So this is something to do with the estrogen levels.
Okay.
While it is estrogen is a protective hormone for heart.
Yes.
So, okay. Any more questions?
Sasikala is asking, what message can we give to our clients from this study?
Yeah, so if they're already having a cataract, like, they have to go for surgical extraction based on the maturity of the cataract that they have. At that stage, at nutrition point, I don't think so there is nothing that can be controlled, because it is, as I mentioned, development of cataract is not an overnight process.
Right.
So it takes some decades, 10 to 20 years, based on the status of health that an individual is maintaining. So even in the worst hyperglycemic states, the cataract would develop, would take almost like, 3 or 4 years to become mature, where it can be surgically removed. But very early in Indians, at the age of 40, we have seen that none of them are, it is very difficult to find a person having a clear lens. So that was a major finding.
Okay.
And what could be the reoccurrence? There are certain cases of reoccurrence of cataract too after the extraction.
This is one of the cons of the cataract, surgical removal of the cataracts. It is something to do at the operation level.
Okay.
It is not that, they almost take, when the cataract surgery is performed, it is not that you are doing some surgery kind of thing as you do for other organs. There, the complete lens is being removed from the eyeball and is replacement of an artificial lens. So if that lens is not properly placed, or even if it is placed after a subject goes home, there is some post-operative surgery procedure that they have to follow, not exposing them to too much of light or heat. For example, I stay in a nuclear family. Now, my husband doesn't know cooking. Next day, I have to be in kitchen. So I'm exposing, very immediate day of my surgery, my eye to the extreme amount of heat during cooking. So such kind of, procedures will lead to reoccurrence of cataract.
Okay. Any more doubts from audience?
Just one question from me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is what I have seen, a very extensive study of experiment and lot of biochemical parameters and the biostatistics, whatnot. And the presentation was so huge and so informative, if not informative. Express way of speaking, of presenting, made us to be a bit of alert of listening. But what I would like to say that the presentation has got something to do with the diabetes retinopathy and the oxidative status of the diabetic retinopathy and the physiotherapy. And how you got any such a 1,000 people you trained out? Do you have any diabetic retinopathy cases in that?
Yes, sir. We have lots of population who came into our study when we were doing enrollment. We came across lots of people having retinopathy complications. But since we focused only on cataract, we have excluded them from the study.
It's very nice.
So we don't
Could you
have any
explain
subjects other than cataract in our study.
Okay.
So any other eye-related problems, we have excluded.
You excluded the retinopathy case?
Yes, sir. Any other, even we have excluded anyone who has early changes in their lens, who had non-gradable cataracts or any disease or disorder in the eye.
So it is diabetes, it's nothing to do with the diabetic cataract. People used to say the diabetic cataract.
No,
Now it is
no,
an
no, sir.
individual.
That probably the introduction part you have missed. I have mentioned that, diabetic population, if they are maintaining, they are maintaining a strict glycemic control, not crossing their HbA1c value to be more than 7, such kind of people, they are at lower risk of developing cataracts when compared to the normal population. So if there is uncontrolled, sorry, sir.
Please continue.
Yeah. So when there is uncontrolled hyperglycemia, the diabetic population are at 60% risk compared to the normal population in developing cataracts. Now, this also depends, not only depends upon only the glycemic values, but the duration of diabetes and the age, and also, as I mentioned, the gender. Because in case of women, there is another factor called estrogen that is making them as a risk. I mean, putting them at the risk zone.
So one more question to you.
Yes, sir.
What were the criteria, biochemical parameters for the glucose you have taken from? There is a lot of discussion going on in worldwide. The criteria which has been prescribed by WHO and other agencies, or I say other medical institutes, does have anything to do with it now?
So even WHO says that you can either go with plasma glucose levels or the fasting blood glucose levels. But
what was the fasting blood sugar levels? Normal bio parameters.
Fasting is sir, we have something called as normal, something called as pre-diabetic. That is the risk zone. I'm trying to tell you, sir. There is a risk zone and then clear-cut diabetes.
Please listen to me.
Yes, sir.
This diabetes diagnosis and the diabetes parameters, biochemical parameters, has got controversy all over the world now, isn't it? Do you explain anything on that particular point? What was the random blood sugar cutoff?
Sir, the cutoff over at least 2 or 3 decades was never brought down, but then they have classified it in a different way. Previously, we had only normal and diabetic. Now we have 3 to 4 classifications in between.
What criteria you have taken for the normal
Sir,
control and
WHO,
control group?
yeah, usually when WHO does the studies, there are huge epidemiological studies that are done and covering, globally all the countries, taking the information, and they decide the cutoff level, sir.
Okay. Nice of you, and it's a nice presentation. And it needs a lot of explanation also for certain times, because it's not the live platform where we can discuss in detail. It's very happy to note that you have presented an express way of presentation, and I would like to say that it needs people to understand properly. The running time and all these things require a lot of confusion. Anyhow, it's very nice of you. Thank you very much for coming to this platform and explaining to people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It is very well explained and very clearly said about the groups and the cutoff points, sir. In the initially she explained it.
Yeah.
So
there,
yeah.
The extensive research presentation, whenever it goes,
Yes,
it need lot of concentration to listen.
she did the extensive research and did present extensively.
And the way she was presenting, I thought she wanted to complete it with her own total presentation to make it completed. So this is not that. No, we should understand and we should assimilate and say that what is actually it's going on. So that's what that we allot certain. See, when beautiful papers are coming and people are presenting very nicely, needs little time and patience to listen to us. No, that's what the thing is. But it's a very
Actually,
extensive.
yes, this is very extensive study, and all parameters are taken into consideration.
Yeah,
And we have
particularly this
to focus on the listening. I mean, because of the numbers and the values, it just sometimes, after 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it just flies over our head because we
if
may
it
not
is,
because sometimes we may get bored with the numbers, but this is
so
very clearly
that's
given.
what I'm no. That's I want to impress on saying that
Yes.
the total research paper has to be assimilated by us, isn't it? At least not that numbers is different. No, let her to be say that chronological way what happened and what has the statements and all these things will be go through with the presentation with somewhere from journal or somewhere our presentation centers. But thing is, the total extensive research which has been done not able to assimilate. That was the problem when I was listening to them. I don't think so. The professional dietitians needs this information, and the extensive paper has to be made to understand, and that will give some professional experience with that research project. So which is missing. I felt it. Just it was been disturbing somewhat. Small letters with this one just going on, and but it's a very extensive research. I put my mind into it, but things that I could not understand. I'm very sorry to express this, but needs a conclusion and needs a summary, at least summary to be given a wide this one, so that people will see all the dietitians are there. I think so in the total platform, often dietitians coming for listening to you because to understand and good practice of getting experience with you. Isn't it?
Yeah,
That has to be
all
taken.
the sorry to interrupt you, sir. All the dietitians who are listening or the nutritionists who are listening to this were really interested in the cataract management and things. And she has
Really,
really put certain factors like, final factors like age, gender, education, nuclear family. And she also said, irrespective, if diabetes is under control, irrespective of whether diabetic or non-diabetic, the cataract process happens, the polyol pathway takes place. So this is a very important aspect one has to look into. And as a practitioners, we can actually look into when we take the information, we can look into their all these factors. Generally, we take all these factors, so we can look into it is how we are going to apply this information to ourselves. Yeah, for
well
me,
designed,
she has done very good presentation. Very clearly, she explained to
yeah,
us. It is very clear.
well
And
designed. It's a well designed project.
yes, definitely yes.
1,000 participants is a very great collection. I say it has got lot of things in it. Needs
Mm.
an extra content to listen and understand. And
Yes, yes.
understanding diabetes, Dr. Janaki, you just remember, understanding diabetes is equal into a medicine.
No, we are not
Cataract is a part of
here.
diabetes.
Diabetes is not the question, sir. With or without diabetes, it's basically to do with the cataract and understanding that its morbidity, or to some
No, no.
extent, not to complete level.
I'm not.
What do you say, Swati?
Please, Dr.
Sir,
Janaki, please note, I'm not criticizing the presentation or it.
Yes,
My
sir.
intention is
sorry to
Taken,
that it
disturb.
should be
taken, sir. Yes.
Sir, points are very much
this is
noted and
taken in a
considered, sir.
negative
What
way.
if we're
See,
talking on
diabetes is
also?
not. No. Dr. Janaki, listen. I'm telling you, this is going to be helpful platform to every dietitian of this country.
Right.
You must be thankful. We are thankful to you, but does not mean that take it a statement. It's a positive. I'm not criticizing that.
Well taken, sir.
My intention is our subject of research needs to be understood by everybody, which is helpful to. Diabetes is
Yes.
right. I agree with you. She was talking regarding cataract, but in the cataract, she was being talking oxidative status, other things which are
Sir,
very. Yeah, that gives
introduction,
us
I
a
have told what is cataract, sir. I have even told what is the
And,
difference
yeah,
between
she
a
has
cataract and the
clearly.
age-related cataract.
Yes.
And what exactly happening to the lens during the
your
progression of
presentation,
cataract.
your theme and your subject, your theme is 100%. You stick on to your position.
So probably
But the
sir
thing
is
is
saying
that
that, such kind of
listening
presentations
outside,
are
listening
not
outside.
applicable at this
Absolutely.
platform.
No,
Probably
no,
that is the
No,
gist that we are
no,
getting.
not that. Not that.
No, that's okay, ma'am. I wouldn't mind. Because that
no.
also is true.
That's the reaction.
Sir, it is
That's the
sir,
reaction.
one second, sir. You have
Cannot
to
react like that, no. See, my
no,
request
it's
you
not
to you extensive presentation with people to understand properly. That's what
Yes,
my
yes,
purpose.
sir. Probably
I don't
you're talking
think
in
that
terms of,
you are
explaining.
yeah, you are.
no, it is very
When
well understood, sir. Actually, there is not at all a problem because she has very clearly given
Clearly, she
in
has
the
given.
introduction. She
yeah,
has
which time
very
you the
precisely,
time allotted
clearly
is
given.
not sufficient, sir. Yeah.
You joined late,
Anyhow,
little bit
thanks
late.
for listening. No issue. Let me. My opinion, I said, if you take it
Sure,
positively or
sir.
negatively, it's
Yeah,
up to you.
definitely.
So this is a see, the platform needs to be taken care of. My amount of information. This is personal to me, not Danaki or any. Please take care
Yeah,
of.
no,
Thank you.
nothing, sir. It's well taken, sir. Consider it. Definitely. It's well taken, sir. It's really a very good study, and it has really created a
And I
very
would
good
like to just
discussion.
add one more point, ma'am. Probably, sir feels it is incomplete, which might be true because I'll tell you the reason. Because this is very extensive project. So what I have presented before you is only one objective of the entire study. So 4 more objectives are still lying. So this big data along with micronutrient and mineral status is published in my thesis. But here what I have presented is only a part of research, a small piece of work which we have published last year. So other data is in the pipeline to get published, which makes sense when I add that data. And still we have 3 more objectives to accomplish with respect to finding the telomere length or doing a mitocopy number and trying to assess what exactly is happening to the polyol pathway even during normal healthy aging, where it is getting equally activated when compared to controlled diabetes. So all these are in pipeline, all the experiments are already planned and they are in pipeline to be done.
Yeah,
And there is some data which is yet to
Kunjabihari,
publish.
yes, Kunjabihari sir's idea is he wanted something practical in the sense he wants dietitians some take home message, to practice, to put it in the practice. So that's what he
So
is
probably
mentioning.
that is the next part of my study, ma'am, where the dietitians will get involved or try to have interest, because that is more to do about the vitamins and their role to play in development of cataract.
Actually, here Sasikala has given one. She has asked what message we can give to our clients. This is what exactly is sir's discussion. So
that is what, ma'am. So initially, I put a slide saying that prevention is always better than cure.
Correct.
So once the cataract is completely developed, where it is in a stage to get removed, see, at least when a person has clear lens, we can always suggest them to have any, it is like, ma'am, previously, I'll also tell you the true facts. Now, initially, when I was studying or you were studying some decades back, we never knew this, all vitamins and minerals are interlinked.
True.
So even if you go back and see, there are lots of studies, published studies, which concentrate only on metabolism or one or other vitamin, linking it to the progression of cataract. Yes. Now, when down the line, we see all the vitamins and all possible minerals have their equal role in their own way to, develop a disease. So it is not that, that is the reason I told, like, it is not that just because it is happening to the eye, we should only concentrate and prescribing, our clients vitamin A diet or a beta carotene diet. So that is what I felt. You'll be more interested in the second paper that I am going to publish very soon, which only talks about the role of vitamins and their interplay in development of cataract at the molecular mechanism level.
Right.
And that's how you told what, when I asked you the question, any specific food or nutrient, then you said balanced diet. That's
balanced diet. Because, ma'am, it is very difficult even for a patient to, I wouldn't call patient, the subjects to make it understand. So it is not that old era that we recommend them only vitamin A or put them on some beta carotene rich foods. No, because every vitamin has some role or interference to play with another vitamin or a mineral to cause a disease.
Sorry to interrupt. Good evening, everyone.
Hi,
this is Dr. Vani. Hi, Janki Garu. I just want to give a brief information, I could say, because what I have done in my PhD thesis was like oxidative stress among diabetes along with cardiovascular diseases and the supplementation of spirulina. So I have before and after supplementation, I have taken the blood samples and I have analyzed the nutrients, all the nutrients. So what I observed was like beta carotene levels were like improved after supplementation of this spirulina. So when it comes to the supplementation part, I just wanted to give my input. Spirulina is excellently doing a great job in managing with this cataract among diabetics, along diabetes with cardiovascular patients. So I just want to mention here, as this is regarding the same topic.
Oxidative stress.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you, Vani ma'am.
Sasikala again is
But,
she has
Got the clear picture.
yeah, she is mentioning she
So-
got the clear picture from the presentation.
Ma'am, she is happy because she came to know something called as spirulina, which she can recommend to her clients. But definitely, if you look into the nutritive value of spirulina, it can be called as a complete food
True.
Right.
True.
because it has
The
everything in
balanced
it.
diet.
Yeah.
It's a
it has-
balanced thing again. It is not that it is, of course, it is higher in beta carotene and certain other things. But if you look at the other vitamins or the minerals, the proportion is very balanced in. So we never know at the clinical level until we do some biological, studying the signaling cascade and all this. We wouldn't know which vitamin is exactly involved in the progression or the development of cataract. So my next paper would be very interesting. We have found very very good results,
Interesting
which
results.
probably
Wait.
even the society would not accept. Suddenly if you say vitamin A has nothing to do with development of cataract, obviously it was
Yes.
even hard for me also to believe it.
Okay.
So
We'll be
that would be
waiting.
really interesting.
We are waiting for that to
So
be
finally,
published.
it is the balanced diet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Almost
Balanced diet.
every food for that matter is kind of balanced, but some certain nutrients will be on higher side.
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
like no.
And few of
that's why
them will be lacking certain amino acids or
Yes.
the essential fatty acids. So we have to look into everything and then
complement and then plan.
complement, balance, and suggest.
So Renuka is asking, how about hypertensive subjects?
So we do not have any hypertensive subjects with hypertension also in our study. So that is what is now included in the communicable diseases.
Okay.
So yeah, so we have excluded
All
every
other
possible
conditions.
thing that can have an interference with the results.
Okay.
So these subjects are apparently healthy according to the definition of WHO. They just have diabetes or cataract in combination, but they do not have any other ailments of health, either in the eye or in their body.
Okay.
Yeah, normal healthy and diabetic healthy. Nothing
Yes, ma'am.
else.
And
That's it.
very much well controlled diabetic population who are controlling their glycemic load.
Right.
So this is what happens in large epidemiological studies, ma'am. If you look at the studies, the average HbA1c value in some of the reported published studies is 14.1. Now, if you compare certain data with a person having 7.2, definitely the mechanism would change. But they will not take people only who have hyperglycemia. No, they have all mixed population. Anyone who has diabetes is into the study.
Correct.
Okay.
So here it is not like that.
Controlled.
That is why we didn't
Completely
go for a mean value, ma'am. That is another reason that we did not opt for going for the average value.
Mean
we
value.
opted for median
Okay.
in our study.
Okay. Great. It's a really nice presentation. Really nice presentation. And even if you are not without, I mean, not the subject, but the presentation itself, we have to learn, how to take sample, how to introduce, what are the
That is very much important.
This is very important. So
which
that
will
itself is learning
totally,
in this
affect your results.
Correct.
Especially like, I have not seen, see, even I'll tell you the running example at our diagnostic centers, ma'am. I'm going to a physician with some sore throat or something.
Yeah.
So doctor prescribes me some parameter which has to be done and which has to be done at the fasting level. So as a layman, I don't know how many hours I have to fast even before I give a blood sample. So neither a physician says me that information, or at the diagnostic center, a laboratory person, MLT, will talk to me about it. They just draw the blood as soon as you are there, and when they are free to draw the blood. So suppose on that day, I'm like, any days, if a subject is not educated to have their meals as early as possible before 7, and they have to leave their body for fasting for 12 hours.
12 hours.
And more than that is even more beneficial, which we call as intermittent fasting, as 16 hours. But no, ma'am, this is not new that we have invented.
No,
if you go to
don't.
eras, old ages, like, where our grandmothers and, grandfathers live, where there was no electricity, technically we would finish our last meal before the sunset. And even after the sun rises, we did not have so much of processed food in hand to immediately eat after we wake up.
Correct.
So they first have to do all the domestic, works that had to be done at home. Then they go for grading of vegetables in their own, like, backyards, or they milk it, or someone would purchase. But even this milking by some other person will happen only once the domestic work at their home is done.
Correct.
Very true.
So which will all technically take 16 hours of fasting. Now, since this is technically not possible, and which, we are not able to implement, according to WHO, this has been revised to 12 hours.
Okay.
So even
but
this
even
12 hours, if we
also
technically,
not
practical, no, ma'am, we don't do. See, suppose I am having my dinner at 8:30, that is usual dinner time for me. And tomorrow 5:30, I wake up and I rush to the diagnostic center. It's hardly 8 hours. So body is not set to 0.
True. What about many of us? Take my example. Like I will not have my food before 10.
10 p.m. doctor.
Before 10, I can never have.
Oh.
Yeah. So at least, ma'am,
So
after I started doing this study 8 years back, I would be
this
the
is
same
another
as
take-home message. What is fasting and how you have to go for fasting. Blood sample, if you are planning to give blood sample.
Yes.
Fasting 12 hours strictly.
12 hours mandatory, ma'am. You can have water.
Can have water.
But no food. No but food. I have seen people, I tell them repeatedly, you only have to hydrate your body. But they think like, water could be a lemon water, it could be a jeera water, or it could be a warmer water. With n number of combinations, they come and try to give the sample. I simply used to reject, and that is how we took 4 years. Just to, for the screening, enrollment, and recruitment of the subjects. So it is 8 years long study, ma'am, just not.
I know. Really.
I understand.
Great. I understand. I mean, that shows
the dedication and, the passion towards the.
Yeah, it's study. Still not complete. I have to invest 3 more years to finish this project. With respect to other aspects I was mentioning, looking at vitamins, their role to play in progression of cataract. Is the population really deficient of vitamin A now at this stage? Yes or no? Really. Is the population really deficient in B12 or vitamin D? Right. If at all they are deficient, what is the percentage of population? With certain percentage of deficiency in them, is it that they develop so soon?
Okay.
See, ma'am, deficiency also we have different ranges.
Right.
Yes.
Severe, moderate, mild. Just a mild deficiency would not let your body to develop some disease. It will handle for a certain time. True. We have lots of mechanisms in our body to handle at that level.
Correct.
Only beyond which, yes.
When the body gives up, then that too persistently.
Yes, persistently. That is one more thing.
Chronically, if you are abusing, then the results will show up.
Yeah.
But you having mentioned B12 deficiency and vitamin D deficiency, we see at least 90% of the patients are with that. B12. 90% now currently. So, have you come across anything that why it is happening?
Yeah, there's much to do with the analysis part.
Okay.
You have to be very careful in estimation of D3. And like, I recently stopped believing even diagnostic centers. Seriously, ma'am, I'm very sorry to say this, because my own subjects, even after 8 years, they call and ask me if I can draw their blood sample and analyze, and they're ready to give me any amount of money just to get it,
Correct,
perfect
diagnosis.
result, accurate result. Because I'll give you an example if you all have time. So
Yes.
we have a person in our community, so who is actually a brother-in-law to B. Nursing Rao's son, sir, who has been directed to NIN in 80s. So
Okay.
now that person is 80 years old. So I had a cutoff range of 40 to 80 years. So when I was collecting a sample, he was 79 years old. He had cataract, but then he didn't knew that he was diabetic. Okay. And he used to he used to come to the community hall to play caroms and all for his time pass. So I collected his blood sample, and the next day I'm giving his report and saying that, sir, you shouldn't be eating this much amount of sweets, because he used to proudly say, I eat half kg of sweets every day. And can you imagine, his HbA1c was at 16.
Okay.
Oh my God.
And when I told him this, he did not look into the place where I am in what situation I am in. Already there are so many subjects who are pooled around me to get the reports. And he told my brother-in-law, only then I knew that his brother-in-law is once upon a time was a director in NIN. And then he is like, I'll go talk to him, what NIN is doing, what kind of studies do you, what analysis do you do? I eat half kg of sweets every day. And how can you say that, my HbA1c is this, now I should stop eating, all this sweets. And I have to control on, on this and all. Then I told that, sir, calm down. I asked him how his sample was taken previously.
Okay.
And which diagnostic center has done, how it is done, and all that I explained. He got convinced. And then I referred to some diagnostic center where I can at least believe 50%. And I asked him to follow all these guidelines of how you have to, what is 12 hours fasting, why you have to do, why you should give that time to your body to detoxify and come to a, zero stage. We think it is next day, ma'am, but inside our body, for every cell, it is a new life next day.
Right.
So it is coming to a zero stage. We should give that time to our body. So after explaining all this, even the person was educated luckily, so he could understand all this. But he yelled and screamed to a certain extent that the next camp I did not get any subjects for my study. So he did all the procedure, followed and did all the procedure I have done. And his HbA1c value at some other diagnostic center was around 15.7.
Oh,
God.
Then he realized and trusted. But I told him, see, all my subjects are lost, just that, you were not able to accept what has happened to your body.
But it's not right to
yeah, but it is like that in the field, ma'am. You can't expect, because you are taking sample for free. So you have to explain them. You are responsible to, explain, accept, and then give the blood sample voluntarily.
So I have this question after this discussion. Now he's 75-year-old. I mean, it's like 8 years long study. Would you be repeating the same with the same subjects, or you'll be going with the new subjects?
This is not a cohort study. No, this is not a cohort study.
Okay.
This is just a simple case control study where we match our control population with the experimental group.
Okay.
And see what exactly is happening at the biochemical level.
Okay, the vitamin part and minerals part also.
Everything is only a case control, a one-time data.
Okay.
See, from today's talk, we got so many take-home messages.
Very true.
You should start now. Mayuri, start this take-home messages.
Yeah.
I mean, from the study, we have already mentioned about age, gender, education, nuclear family, and the polyal pathway. I mean, irrespective of diabetic or not diabetic regarding cataract. But apart from that, the presentation itself, we have to learn and how to present case studies. And when we do the journal reading, the journal, this is how it has to be presented. So that is one thing. And we realize that it is not a single most nutrient. Always we keep telling, this has to go into people. We call them as facts.
Yes.
But they have a bigger voice than us. But together we can do much more. So it is not single most nutrient. It is not a supplementation alone, but it is to do with even the supplement. For example, Vani mentioned about spirulina. So spirulina, as Swathi mentioned, it is a balanced diet in itself. So this is also one take home message, that when we recommend certain foods, maybe along with that there are other nutrients that are helping out in combating the particular condition. So I think that we have to respect things in that way, especially food, when we are recommending and when the client is following our recommendations. So great to have you, Swathi, and we look forward for the next level presentation too.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
So
you actually
please,
for giving this opportunity. I would
please
also like to thank all the audiences
Yeah.
who showed, like, who had such a lot of patience to sit here for 2 hours almost
So
and then
I
hearing
mean,
what I'm speaking.
yes,
And I
really
would
good.
also like to say that I have never been on social media. So this is the first time that I am on social media with Janaki ma'am and Miss Mayuri.
So this
Thank you for this opportunity.
This is our honor for Tea Talks, and we are very pleased and happy to have you on Tea Talks. And we definitely look forward for the remaining part of
study.
study. So here, Shashikala, we at Aspen Clinic follow these guidelines as Swathi ma'am has said. Now I am a student for nutrition. Thank you for valuable information. So this will go as, for your information, Swathi, this will go as we have a YouTube channel for Tea Talks also. So this will go in the YouTube as well.
No problem. So this has already been published. Whatever I'm talking, all this references and the reasons have been already given in the paper.
Yes. So once it is published, we'll send the link to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Swathi, and keep us updating about your next study so that, we would be happy to present your next study too. Thank you so much for being on Tea Talks and sharing your valuable information. And it was very scientific and very informative. And Tea Talks is very honored to have you on today's session. Thank you so much. And thank you so much from Tea Talks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
you all. Thank
Bye.
you all, audience. See you.
Bye, Mayuri. Bye, audience.
Yeah. See you next Tuesday, same time, same place. Bye-bye.